Well, good morning, viewers and listeners, to another edition of CHP Talks. I'm here with a person that many of our viewers and listeners will know by name if they haven't met her in person, and that is Linda Gibbons. And Linda is in Ontario, I'm in British Columbia, and we're going to be talking about Linda's work saving lives at the abortion clinics and what has come out of that over the years. And so, Linda, thank you for being with me on the call today. Really appreciate you taking the time. We wouldn't be able to do this call if you were behind bars, but you have been and maybe will be in the future. But we thank you for taking some of this time and spending it with us.
Happy to be with you.
So, uh, Linda, you're known throughout the pro-life movement, and most of our viewers and listeners would consider themselves part of that movement. You and Mary Wagner have been in and out of prison for standing, you, in your case, standing on the sidewalk and counseling women as they go into the clinics, often just a silent witness with your beautiful sign, the baby that says, "Why, Mom, when I had so much love to give?" And basically, how did you come to begin doing that work? How did you receive the call? What year did you feel that you had to be making that bold statement, bold but polite statement in front of the abortion clinics?
Well, there was a time when I'd become a Christian, and then the Lord always reviews your life for you, and then you have to come to terms with it. I've written a paper called Coming to Terms, which talks about all that. And so one night I'm in bed and I'm talking with the Lord about this abortion issue. And then I'm in tears. And I said, Lord, why couldn't I have become a Christian a few years earlier? And then I wouldn't have aborted my child. And his answer was to me, you destroyed your child. I gave my child for you for salvation. And then it was after that that I was attending a church, and someone in a neighboring church was showing the video of Nathanson's The Silent Scream. When I saw the barbarity he described of babies being ripped, and if a head was left in, it was crushed. For me, that was very personal. That was like my child's head perhaps was crushed. And it was at that point, it was, you see an evil, and then God's calling you to do something about it. And I believe defending the unborn is my life mission, that I see the unborn children as much my children as my biological children. That if we honestly ask, when does God start loving a child? When the mother decides she's going to keep it? Like, God loves that child from conception. And so we should love them and see them as our own. We're humanity. We embrace humanity. Yeah.
Well, the scripture says that I am my brother's keeper, that we're supposed to be caring for our neighbor. And of course, every child in the neighborhood is also a neighbor. It's not just the people, the adults that own the house, but these children are our neighbors, and that includes, I agree with you, the preborn, the unborn. So what year was that, Linda, that you felt that call?
It was in the like 1977 or something is when I became a Christian. And it was the mid 80s when I started reaching out. I didn't even know there was organizations that were organized. And then I discovered Campaign Life, and they were hugely a blessing in supporting me, giving me direction. And that was the time, shortly after the 80s, that we went into Operation Rescue. And that was a huge movement, stateside as well as Canadian. But when they came up with these RICO laws and bubble zones here, that sort of stymied the cause. But in my mind, it shouldn't have stymied the cost, only the cost went up. So it's not saying you can't do it, but there's a price to pay.
Yeah. So the bubble zone laws, I think most of our listeners would know, but those are laws put into place by provinces or municipalities that would make it illegal to stand within so many meters of the entrance of an abortion clinic for the purpose of challenging, or counseling women, kind of raising the question. How would you put that, Linda? Something like that?
The idea of that there's a geographical area for the protection of life, that's arbitrary. It's arbitrary. And because it doesn't, if someone was killing their child across the street, the law doesn't require me to intervene, but conscience would say, do something about that. So if they are saying, well, we've decided this area, these children will be outside the protection for the convenience of whoever wants to go in and have their child destroyed. That too, the police are there to protect life, and yet they come to remove me for trying to offer protection. Because when I'm there, I'm not there to make a political statement. I'm not there to contend with the police. In fact, because I'm silent, I'm usually praying for the police that are there that day. I respect police. I believe a society that doesn't have a police force is in real trouble. So I'm there to minister to that baby that's going to be killed that day in the abortion clinic. And if I can't reach that woman, then I can still pray for that child, that child deserves to have someone there concerned about its soul.
Yeah. Yeah, theoretically, in this country, we have free speech, and we have all kinds of expression being put forward that's called freedom of speech, and yet here, where you're talking actually about protecting innocent human life, the very place where those lives are most threatened is the place where our government has deemed that you have no freedom to speak in that area. So. But it's quite a step that you've taken, you and others, the whole movement, to interfere in one way, shape, or form. You're interfering on a very gentle statement. You're just basically there as a silent witness, praying and so on. But that's the one place the government has said that you cannot raise your concerns, and it's really a hypocritical notion. So I know from speaking with you many times in the past that you have had an impact, that there have been women on their way to have an abortion who have changed their mind and have decided to keep the baby. And maybe you can tell us a few of those stories. I've heard the number that possibly about 100 babies are now alive and young people or growing up in Canada as a result of your witness. Can you speak about some of those?
Well, I think something that has inspired me, there was a lady in Auschwitz, Stanislava, and she was a midwife. And so she's dealing with Mengele. She isn't dealing with the police that's going to handle you gently. She is herself in captivity. And she was able to deliver 40 babies with no supplies, anything to save lives. When the place was liberated, 40 babies were carried out of there. And imagine those 40 children now are grandparents with their own children and grandchildren. So I look at a situation and I say, yes, you're arrested. And people may not like it, but I never went and took a poll to find out what people thought I should or shouldn't. You're there, not something you're doing, something God is using you for. So when I was in prison, there was a woman who had lost 3 children to the Children's Aid because of drug abuse. Now she's pregnant, has twins, and the jail doctor was very much a pro-abort. Her and one woman had broke her ankle, and she said, the doctor told me I should have an abortion, my ankle would heal better. She said, I know, she doesn't value me as a prisoner, and she doesn't value my child. And so that was one example. So this other woman that had lost 3 to the Children's Aid with twins, we told her we could set up an open adoption. So you would be able to talk to the children on special occasions. You would be able to receive letters, how they're doing. It wouldn't be you surrendered your child and now you're left that way with not knowing how they're doing, whatever. So those twin boys were adopted by a lady. I'm very grateful to the Aid to Women. They taught, they figured out, they visited her, they set up the adoption. And you have to do it early because if you wait until the children are born, it can't happen. And so those boys today would be 30 years old.
Wow.
So I often say that people, well, what are you doing it for? Or when I'm dead and gone, those people are still walking around. And like those 40 babies saved at Auschwitz, they're having children and children's children. And if we say, well, too much population and whatever reason we try to justify our inactivity, we're forgetting that we serve a God who created them. And God would say, as he said in the Old Testament, you are killing my children. And the shedding of blood, God in the Old Testament always said, you have forsaken my laws. So if we're not standing up for them, we're not standing. And he said, I will turn my face away from you and I will forget your children. And I've often said, if we had some terrorist, 10 years ago, you might have not thought so. But if we had a terrorist breaking into our church and grabbing our children from our arms, and we should cry out to God, God, deliver my children. He could well say, where were you to deliver my children when they were torn out of my arms?
Mm-hmm.
So I take that very personally, that we have not only a duty, but compassion. Our heart should be moved to just not remain docile.
Yeah. Yeah, Linda, you know that how I feel very strongly that our nation, Canada, and the provinces individually, because they have supported the killing of the innocent and defended it, and in fact have put all kinds of obstacles in the way of people like you and me who want to protect life. I believe that our nation is guilty of the shedding of innocent blood, that we're polluted. People are worried about the pollution of various types of industrial pollution, but we're polluted with innocent blood, and the Bible uses that phrase. And our nation can never have the blessing of God that we would like to see as long as we continue to kill the innocent. So I think you're not coming at it from a political point of view. You're coming at it from a witness point of view, as a faithful, silent witness. And you and Mary Wagner is a similar story. First of all, tell the audience who may not know how many years you have spent behind bars, off and on.
About 25 arrests and roughly 11 years of actual incarceration.
Yeah.
Yeah. My
So,
record may be less, but when I'm arrested, I don't take bail. So I'm often in pretrial for a month and a half or two because I won't sign bail, because bail would be an admission of having done something that you need to be on probation for. So bail is something I never take.
yeah. And bail, you would have to commit to conditions. You'd have to agree not to continue to defend innocent life in the way you're doing. So that's noble. But 11 years in jail, and I believe Mary Wagner has spent about 5 years in jail, something like that, off and on. And you both, at one point in time, maybe more than once, you were both in the women's facility in Mississauga. Have I got that right?
Milton. We were
Milton.
together in one. Yeah.
Milton, because my wife and I had the privilege of visiting you, both of you there. It was a very awkward visit. They don't make it easy. You were in maximum security for trying to defend innocent human life. And I know my wife and I were perched on a single stool, trying to balance on a stool, holding on to a short cord telephone through a thick glass. And there you are. And now we have people walking the streets who have actually committed murder, who are guilty of theft and all kinds of other abominations. Meanwhile, you have spent 11 years in prison. I think it's amazing, and people need to understand where this country is at.
Well, I've often, if you only see one baby in a lifetime, it's worthy of a lifetime in jail, a life for a life.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I know that when you and Mary were in jail, you had, I mean, it's a punishment, but you were able to turn it into a blessing for some of those with whom you shared that space. Maybe you can, I think you and Mary had Bible studies or prayer sessions with other women who are in that facility. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, the number one thinking when people ask me, tell me about the women that were in prison, I always preface it by saying, I refer to them as my girls, and I try to be there for them as a sister, maybe a bit of a mother to some of them. And so to me, they are precious. And I think of it, when you have a Christian ministry in prison, people can come in and visit with someone one-on-one for an hour. But when you're in prison, they see your warts and your moles. They see everything you're doing. and they're valuing Christianity and a relationship with Christ according to how you're walking. And so for me, it was like a 24/7 looking at these women, and they'll often talk about, well, you're religious. And no, 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 no. I'm a sinner like you. So you're identifying with the troubles and distress that they're going through, and you're letting them know that God is very approachable, that the system has put labels on you. They have said you're a drug addict, you're a prostitute, whatever. When I'm referring to these girls, it's a woman involved in the sex trade. It's a woman having difficulty with taking drugs. But I often tell the girls, don't put labels on yourself, because God doesn't put labels on you. Yeah, so we would have Bible studies, and a number of girls did come to the faith. But there was other things we did where, like a very unusual case is a woman from Iran was in jail. And technically, because she's from Iran, she would be considered a refugee. So she was here, and she was pregnant, and they were going to deport her. Well, when they deport you, they give you a paper that tells you within a week you're going to be gone. And I said to Mary, you know, once they've made up that deportation within 7 days, the idea of intervening in that is incredibly difficult. And Mary said, well, I heard an Iranian lady talking on the TV. She's someone that advocates. And I saw an article we get the National Post while we're in jail. And she said there was an article of hers in the National Post. Why don't we try to call them and contact her? And my eyes are sort of rolling. But then we did that. The guy at the National Post actually did give us her name and phone number. Mary called her. She came to visit her at the prison. Within a few days, we heard the deportation was canceled, and she was out, had her baby. I talked to her after she was out. But this is where Mary Wagner is just a bulldog. There's no stone unturned. When she puts her mind to save those babies, there's nothing unusual that she wouldn't do.
No, no.
Yeah.
Praise the Lord. That's a great story. You also have been, well, I'm going to say a few years ago, maybe quite a few years ago now, we had a conference in the lower mainland of British Columbia, and you were on stage with us with Dr. Charles Lugosi, a great lawyer. And so you've been through the court system. Is there anything that any of the court appearances or any of that procedure that you think might be helpful for people to understand? Charles, of course, has been a great friend of the pro-life movement and has worked in the court system right up to the Supreme Court, defending life and defending a philosophical understanding of the value of human life. But maybe you can speak a little bit about your experience in the court system.
Well, when we were in the court with Charles Lugosi for Mary's case, they had brought an abortionist in that was at the clinic, and she was giving her testimony. So Charles Lugosi they always tried to say, well, the police were called because we thought they were violent or dangerous. So Charles Lugosi would go through the behaviors, and then he would eventually get them to admit. So that wasn't violent. So it wasn't dangerous. So this is all they were doing. And then he stepped a little further and said to them, why wouldn't you, if you have a clinic, if you say these women should have counseling? Mary's position is that how can they make a decision when they haven't been told any, about who's there inside them? What is there? What's the stage of growth? How does it develop? I mean, then all of a sudden the humanity of the child would speak for itself. And so she said, why would I want to do it? But then this uncovers the big abortion lie. In the Bible, there's a couple places in the Bible where someone says, when you shed innocent blood for profit, for that, then it's so much more contemptible. And her answer back to Charles Lugosi is, I don't need to do that. They know what they came here for. And in other words, business as usual. So it's not about what kind of counseling. It's how many can I get done in a day?
Yeah.
And some can do 20 abortions in a day if they have a mind to. So then there is no real medical counseling, medical supervision. Abortion has nothing to do with medicine. It's just a window dressing you put on when you remove the laws to make it look, to validate it. And,
Yeah.
and it has nothing to do with true medicine.
I agree with you. And I think many people in our country, unfortunately, are not aware of the fact that Planned Parenthood and other abortion clinics and those who make their living in that grisly trade, that they are actually businesses functioning and making a profit on the shedding of innocent blood. And of course, down in the States, we've had the expose that abortion clinics under Planned Parenthood actually selling baby parts. And the government's response down there, as ours in Canada would be, is to punish the person who exposed it rather than to address the issue of people killing babies for profit. But anyway, that's wonderful that you are able to bring that message so clearly to those you come in contact with.
Well, it is. It's procured abortion, but it's Frankenstein medicine.
Yeah.
Like some of these abortions, the research they're doing, that baby has to be retrieved within 5 minutes from the abortion. So it's not arbitrary or random. These are set up appointments where we will come and retrieve that fetus. It has to be within 5 minutes that it's, so some of these could even be live babies.
Mm-hmm.
If they've had induction because for whatever reason. So this is where it goes into barbarity. Yeah.
So, Linda, you've had a rare window the last couple of years where you have not been behind bars, and you've been helping a senior pro-life woman with looking after her, and as she has given herself also to the movement, and so you've made it your task to care for her and what do you see in the future? Like, do you?
My friend would come to court for 20 years, every court session I had, she would come to court. When she could no longer drive because of her eyesight, she would take the bus to come down to the court. And I remember she turned 90 in September. I had a court case. My last case was like, I think December or something. And I was getting out in January. And I'm in court. I'm in the box behind the glass. And I'm looking over. And there she is standing up with her little white curls. And I'm thinking, do you know, it's time for payback. She's 90. She needs some loyal care coming back her way. So yeah, I looked after her for 7 years, and those were halcyon years. I just love her, and she's feisty. She had used to counsel 2 days a week when she was a lab technician at St. Joe's. And when she retired from there, then she went into ProLife 2 days a week, attended all campaign life functions, meetings. Her and her sister were adamant pro-lifers and supported pro-life causes. So yeah, I look back at those 7 years that for me, that was a friendship of a lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we had the privilege, also, Elaine and I had the privilege of visiting you and Mary Wagner in that house with your friend, and it was a very special place, a very sacred place, a place where life is honored, prayed for, and diligently defended, right? Yeah. So what does the future hold for you now? You have some obligations currently.
Well, I am hoping that when within the next few months that things will settle with the house that Mary was in. And once that is settled, then I absolutely want to get back in to seeking out saving babies. Yeah. Well,
Well, Linda, go ahead.
even women referred to us as baby savers. Or the worst thing would be, they would say, that's the abortion lady. And I'd be saying, no, no, no. They couldn't get the word pro-life there. But they would come to me and say, Linda, that girl's thinking of having an abortion. You better go talk to her. And then I was in court one day, and we're in this basement of the court, which is cement slab seats. And some girl came in, and they always ask you immediately when you're arrested, what are you here for? Well, this one woman found out I was here for that. She said, oh, so you're against abortion, are you? And she starts rattling. Another girl sitting on the corner said, hey, don't discuss abortion here. We all don't believe in abortion. And that was the end of the conversation.
Well,
yeah. But you see, if I was an abortion supporter in prison, that would influence the women because you're the underdog. I'm the underdog, so they're supporting me.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and Linda, one of the other times when you were out from behind bars, you took part in a by-election on our behalf. You, even though you're not basically a political person, you were willing to carry the message of life and family and freedom to one of the ridings in a by-election in Toronto. So I want to thank you for that, honor you for your willingness to do that. I think you also paid a price during that time. You broke your ankle or something while you were campaigning.
Yeah. But you know, the CHP, for me, I can only vote for something in good conscience. And if I'm looking for the least evil, that isn't the way I want to go. I want to go no compromise, no excuses. And if people make up excuses for who they vote for, you know, that's your freedom of conscience. But my conscience is bound that my Canada includes the unborn. So for me, if it's not a CHP, and I'm very disappointed that there isn't more people stepping up, because if we believe in Christian values, I mean, you hear a certain person talk about Canadian values. No, Canadian values, Christian values, that's our Judeo-Christian heritage. And when we can say, well, on pro-life, I'll silence my voice. On other things, I'll vote. No. If you don't vote for life, there's nothing left after that. That is a nation self-destructing. So for me, CHP is a joy to my soul to know it exists, to know I can vote in good conscience for it. I only wish more people were picking up the torch and running for the babies.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for that. Anything else that you would like to make sure that we mention before we close off here?
Well, I would like to bless all your supporters and their families and what they do for the Christian Heritage Party, and wish them all God's richest blessings in the new year.
Well, thank you so much, and God bless you. I'm glad that you've had the opportunity to spend some time with family this Christmas season or into the new year. And we certainly will pray for God's blessing over you as you continue this important work of protecting and saving and defending innocent human life. Thank you, Linda Gibbons.
Thank you. God bless.
God bless you. Bye-bye.